It was a quiet evening as Erica Johnson drove her car down a wide tree-lined road. She had just finished a long day of work. Erica was an FBI agent, smart, hardworking, and respected in her field. She had spent years solving tough cases, but tonight she just wanted to go home and rest. As Erica's car moved steadily along the road, she noticed flashing lights in her rearview mirror. A police car was following her, signaling her to pull over. Surprised, she wondered what she could have done wrong. Erica knew she wasn't speeding, and her car was in perfect condition. Still, she calmly pulled over to the side of the road. The officer, a tall man with a stern expression, approached her car. His name was Officer Brian Cooper. Erica rolled down her window and greeted him politely. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" Officer Cooper didn't respond to her greeting. Instead, he glanced at her and said, "License and registration." His tone was cold and formal. Erica handed over her documents with a calm smile. "Here you go, officer," she said, keeping her voice steady. She had been trained to stay calm in stressful situations, and tonight was no different. Officer Cooper looked at her papers, then at her. His expression didn't change. "Where are you headed?" he asked. "I'm on my way home," Erica replied simply. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Officer Cooper's eyes narrowed. "What do you do for a living?" he asked. "I'm an FBI agent," Erica said, reaching into her bag to show her badge. She held it out so he could see it clearly. It was the same badge she had used for years to identify herself on assignments. Instead of relaxing, Officer Cooper frowned. "This doesn't look real," he said sharply. "How do I know this isn't fake?" Erica was taken aback. She had always carried her badge, and no one had ever questioned its authenticity. "Officer, I assure you, it's real," she said calmly. But Officer Cooper didn't seem convinced. "Step out of the car," he ordered. Erica hesitated for a moment, then complied. She knew the importance of staying calm and following instructions, even if the situation didn't feel right. As she stood outside her car, Erica couldn't help but notice a few people on the sidewalk, watching the scene unfold. Some of them pulled out their phones, recording the encounter. Erica didn't let it distract her. She stood tall and confident, her years of training guiding her actions. Officer Cooper began to search her car, still acting as if he didn't believe her story. Erica knew she hadn't done anything wrong, but she also understood that sometimes things didn't go the way they should. As the night grew darker, Erica silently promised herself one thing. Whatever happened next, she would handle it with the same professionalism and strength she always carried with her. Little did she know, this encounter would change everything. Erica stood calmly by the side of the road as Officer Cooper continued searching her car. The evening breeze was cool, but the situation felt tense. She had done nothing wrong, yet here she was, being treated as if she were a criminal. Despite the unfairness of it all, Erica reminded herself to stay composed. After what felt like an eternity, Officer Cooper walked back toward her. His expression was serious, and his tone was sharp. "I'm placing you under arrest for providing false identification," he said. Erica was stunned. "False identification?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "Officer, I've shown you my FBI badge and my credentials. They're not fake." But Cooper didn't listen. He reached for his handcuffs and said, "Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Erica hesitated. She wanted to explain again, to make him understand, but she knew this wasn't the time to argue. Fighting back would only make things worse. Slowly, she turned around and did as she was told. She felt the cold metal cuffs click around her wrists. On the sidewalk, a small crowd had gathered. Some people whispered to each other, while others kept recording the scene on their phones. Erica could feel their eyes on her, but she stayed focused. She wasn't just any person being arrested. She was a federal agent, and she knew this incident would have consequences. Officer Cooper led Erica to his patrol car and helped her into the back seat. As she sat there, staring out the window at the growing crowd, her mind raced. She thought about her years of training, her work with the FBI, and all the time she had handled tense situations. This moment was unlike anything she had ever faced before. The drive to the police station was quiet. Erica could hear the faint sound of the radio in the front of the car, but she didn't say a word. She was thinking about what to do next. Should she call her supervisor? Should she wait to see how this played out? She decided to stay calm and let the truth speak for itself. When they arrived at the station, Erica was taken inside and placed in a holding cell. The room was small, with gray walls and a cold bench. Erica sat down and took a deep breath. She wasn't angry. She was determined. She knew she had done nothing wrong, and she trusted that the truth would come out eventually. As the hours passed, Erica listened to the sounds of the station, the buzz of voices, the shuffle of papers, and the occasional clang of doors. She observed everything around her, noticing the people coming and going. Some of the other detainees shared their stories, and Erica listened with interest. Many of them talked about feeling powerless and misunderstood. Sitting there, Erica made a decision. She would use this experience not just to clear her name, but to address something bigger. She had a voice, and she would use it. Little did Officer Cooper know, this arrest was only the beginning of a much larger story. Erica sat quietly on the hard bench in the holding cell, her hands resting on her lap. The room was small and dimly lit, with pale gray walls and a single barred door. The faint hum of conversation and the clanging of doors echoed through the station. Erica took a deep breath, staying calm despite the unsettling situation. Around her, a few other detainees sat or stood, each with their own story. A young woman sat in one corner, her face buried in her hands, while an older man leaned against the wall, staring off into the distance. Erica could feel their frustration and fear, emotions she rarely experienced in her line of work. She had spent years investigating cases and helping people, but now she was seeing a side of the justice system she had only read about. One of the detainees, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, broke the silence. "You don't look like you belong here," he said, his voice gentle. Erica gave him a small smile. "I don't," she replied simply, "but I guess that's not up to me right now." The man nodded, his expression thoughtful. "They'd brought you in fast," he said. "What happened?" Erica hesitated for a moment, then decided to share the basics. "I was stopped by a police officer on my way home. I showed him my FBI badge, but he didn't believe me. Now I'm here." The man raised his eyebrows. "FBI? Huh. That's something," he said. "Guess even agents aren't immune to this kind of thing." His words hung in the air, and Erica thought about what he said. She had always believed in the system she worked for. But sitting in that cell, she realized how flawed it could be. Her arrest wasn't just about one officer making a mistake. It was a symptom of a bigger problem. The young woman in the corner looked up, her tear-streaked face full of curiosity. "Are you really an FBI agent?" she asked softly. Erica nodded. "I am," she said. "And I promise you, I'm going to do everything I can to fix this, for all of us." Her words seemed to give the others a sense of hope. They began sharing their stories, tales of being stopped unfairly, of feeling powerless, and of losing trust in the system. Erica listened carefully, her sharp mind piecing together patterns and connections. She realized this wasn't just about her own experience. It was about something much larger. Hours passed, but Erica didn't waste a moment. She used the time to think, plan, and reflect. By the time a guard came to check on her, Erica's resolve was stronger than ever. She wasn't just going to clear her name. She was going to use this moment to bring about change. As the night wore on, Erica sat back and stared at the barred door. She knew her team would eventually realize she was missing, and when they did, the truth would come out. But for now, she stayed calm, ready for the next step. She didn't know it yet, but her story was already beginning to inspire others, even within that small holding cell. The hours ticked by slowly in the holding cell, but Erica remained calm and composed. She knew her team at the FBI would notice her absence and take action. Erica wasn't just an agent. She was respected and known for her integrity. She trusted that her colleagues wouldn't let her stay in this situation for long. Sure enough, back at the FBI field office, her supervisor, Special Agent Mark Davis, noticed Erica hadn't checked in after her assignment. Mark was a no-nonsense leader who valued his team. He immediately called Erica's phone, but there was no answer. Concerned, he began making inquiries, tracing her last known location. It didn't take long for him to learn that she had been arrested by a local police officer. The news shocked him. "What?" Mark said aloud, his voice firm. "Arrested? That doesn't make any sense." Mark wasted no time. He grabbed his jacket and headed to the precinct where Erica was being held. As soon as he arrived, he demanded to speak to the officer in charge. The desk sergeant looked surprised when Mark introduced himself and showed his FBI badge. "Agent Erica Johnson is in your custody," Mark said, his voice calm but commanding. "You need to release her immediately." The sergeant hesitated. "I'll have to check with the arresting officer," he said. Mark raised an eyebrow. "No, you don't," he replied firmly. "She's a federal agent. Detaining her without proper cause is a serious mistake. I suggest you act quickly." Meanwhile, in the holding cell, Erica heard footsteps approaching. The door opened, and a guard gestured for her to step out. "You've got someone here for you," the guard said. Erica followed the guard down the hallway, and when she saw Mark standing at the front desk, a wave of relief washed over her. She had known her team wouldn't leave her behind. "Agent Johnson," Mark said, his voice steady. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Erica replied. "But we have a lot to talk about." Officer Cooper appeared at that moment, looking confused and uneasy. He hadn't expected anyone to come for Erica, let alone someone of Mark's rank. Mark turned to him with a piercing gaze. "Officer Cooper, I trust you understand the gravity of this situation," he said. "You arrested a federal agent without cause and refused to verify her credentials. That's a serious error." Cooper stammered. "I thought her badge was fake. I was just doing my job." Mark's expression didn't soften. "Your job includes verifying information, not jumping to conclusions. This will be addressed." Erica stood silently, her professional demeanor unshaken. She knew Mark was handling the situation, and she didn't need to say anything. Yet, the tension in the room was palpable as the officers at the station realized they had made a grave mistake. As Erica walked out of the station with Mark, she felt a mix of emotions: relief, determination, and a deep sense of purpose. This wasn't just about clearing her name. It was about exposing the flaws in the system and making sure this didn't happen to anyone else. Little did Officer Cooper know, Erica's next move would leave him and the world speechless. The next morning, Erica woke up to a flurry of messages and phone calls. Video footage of her arrest had gone viral overnight. Clips of her calm demeanor and Officer Cooper's dismissive attitude were being shared widely on social media. The hashtags #JusticeForErica and #AccountabilityNow were trending, and people across the country were speaking out. At first, Erica was hesitant to look at the videos. She had spent years working behind the scenes, solving cases quietly. Now, her face and name were everywhere. News outlets were covering the story, and civil rights groups were demanding an investigation into the actions of Officer Cooper and his department. Her phone buzzed again. It was a call from her supervisor, Mark Davis. "Erica, I'm sure you've seen what's happening," he said. "This has become much bigger than just the precinct. The public wants answers, and so do we." "I've seen the videos," Erica replied. "But this isn't about me, Mark. It's about something much bigger. What happened to me is just one example of a larger issue." Mark nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I understand, and I support you," he said. "Take some time to decide how you want to move forward. The Bureau will back you up." Meanwhile, Officer Cooper was feeling the pressure. His department was flooded with calls and emails from concerned citizens demanding accountability. The chief of police called a meeting to address the growing crisis. "Officer Cooper," the chief said, his tone firm, "you need to explain yourself. Why did you arrest Agent Erica Johnson without verifying her credentials?" Cooper, now visibly nervous, stammered, I thought her badge was fake. I didn't think an FBI agent would be driving through our area in plain clothes." The chief sighed. "That's not an excuse. This has put the entire department under scrutiny. You've made a mistake, and now we all have to deal with the consequences." Back at her home, Erica began receiving messages of support from friends, colleagues, and even strangers. Some thanked her for staying calm during the arrest, while others shared their own stories of unfair treatment. Erica read each message carefully, realizing that this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone who had faced injustice. She decided to make a statement. Sitting at her desk, Erica wrote a thoughtful message and posted it on her social media accounts. "What happened to me was wrong, but it's not just about me. This is a chance for all of us to look closely at the systems in place and demand accountability. I'm committed to using this experience to bring about change. For everyone." Her post quickly went viral, with thousands of people sharing and commenting. Activists and leaders reached out to collaborate, and Erica began to feel a sense of purpose. She wasn't just a victim of injustice, she was a catalyst for change. As the public backlash grew, the pressure on the police department increased. Erica knew that this was just the beginning. She was determined to turn this moment into a movement, one step at a time. Erica sat in her quiet home, scrolling through the overwhelming messages of support on her phone. The world had noticed her story, and many were looking to her for leadership. It was a responsibility she hadn't planned for, but one she couldn't ignore. She knew she had to act, not just for herself, but for the countless others who had faced similar situations. The next morning, Erica reached out to her colleagues at the FBI. With her supervisor's approval, she requested access to data on complaints filed against law enforcement agencies. She wanted to understand the bigger picture, how often incidents like hers occurred, what actions were taken, and how the system could improve. Mark, her supervisor, supported her efforts, saying, "If anyone can turn this into something meaningful, it's you." But Erica knew data alone wouldn't be enough. She needed to connect with people on the ground. She reached out to local community leaders and organizations that worked on justice reform. Many of them were eager to collaborate, inspired by her calm and professional handling of her own ordeal. Within days, Erica organized her first meeting. It was held in a community center, with people from all walks of life filling the room. Some were activists, others were concerned citizens, and a few were even retired law enforcement officers who wanted to see change from within. Standing at the front of the room, Erica began to speak. Her voice was steady but filled with passion. "What happened to me is just one story," she said, "but it's part of a larger issue, an issue that affects people every single day. We can't ignore it anymore." She paused, looking around the room. "I believe change is possible, but it's going to take all of us working together, sharing our stories, identifying the problems, and pushing for real solutions." The crowd nodded in agreement. People began sharing their own experiences, some tearful, others filled with anger. Erica listened intently, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. She wanted to understand not just the problems, but also the solutions that the community envisioned. As the meeting ended, Erica felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about clearing her name or holding one officer accountable. It was about creating a system where trust and fairness were the norm, not the exception. Meanwhile, the police department where Officer Cooper worked was under increasing scrutiny. Local officials announced an independent investigation into their practices, and Cooper was temporarily placed on administrative leave. The department's chief publicly acknowledged the need for change, saying, "We must rebuild trust with our community." Erica didn't dwell on Officer Cooper or the police department. Her focus was on the future. She began drafting a proposal for better training programs for officers, focusing on implicit bias and community engagement. She also started working with legal experts to explore policy changes that could prevent similar incidents in the future. As days turned into weeks, Erica's efforts began to take shape. People across the country were inspired by her calm, determined approach. She wasn't just reacting to what had happened. She was leading the way toward a better future. As Erica's efforts gained momentum, the investigation into Officer Cooper's actions and the department's practices reached a turning point. The independent review revealed a troubling pattern. Multiple complaints of unfair treatment and bias had been filed against Officer Cooper in the past, but they had been ignored or dismissed. This time, with Erica's story in the spotlight, things were different. The local community demanded accountability. Protests were held outside the precinct, with people holding signs that read, "Justice for all," and "Reform the system." News reporters covered the growing calls for change, and public pressure pushed officials to take swift action. Inside the precinct, Officer Cooper faced an internal review panel. His confident demeanor from the night of Erica's arrest was gone, replaced by nervousness. The panel questioned him about his actions that night and why he had refused to verify Erica's credentials. His answers were vague, and it became clear that his biases had clouded his judgment. Meanwhile, Erica continued her work, meeting with law enforcement leaders, community activists, and policymakers. She presented a detailed report based on her research, outlining key areas for improvement. Her recommendations included better officer training, stronger accountability measures, and transparent systems for handling complaints. "We need to build a system that treats everyone with respect and fairness," Erica said during a meeting with local officials. "It's not just about punishing bad behavior, it's about preventing it in the first place." Her words resonated with many, and the city council announced plans to implement several of her proposals. One of the first changes was the creation of a civilian oversight board to review complaints against officers. It was a step toward restoring trust between the police and the community. Back at the precinct, the chief of police held a press conference. Standing in front of cameras, he addressed the public. "We've made mistakes," he admitted, "and it's clear that we need to do better." Effective immediately, Officer Cooper has been suspended, and our department will undergo mandatory training on bias and community engagement. The announcement marked a significant victory, but Erica knew there was still much work to be done. She wasn't interested in celebrating individual punishments. She wanted to see systemic change. Still, she felt a sense of relief knowing that her experience had brought attention to these issues. In the weeks that followed, Erica became a symbol of strength and resilience. People across the country reached out to thank her for standing up, not just for herself, but for everyone who had been treated unfairly. Her calm yet determined approach inspired others to share their stories and demand change in their own communities. For Officer Cooper, the reckoning was personal. He began to reflect on his actions and the choices that had led him to this point. The experience forced him to confront his biases and reconsider how he approached his role as a police officer. As Erica continued her mission, she remained focused on the bigger picture. This wasn't just about fixing one department or punishing one officer. It was about creating a justice system that truly lived up to its name. The community was beginning to see change. Erica's efforts had sparked conversations that reached beyond her city, inspiring other towns and cities to examine their own practices. But for Erica, the work wasn't just about creating policies. It was about building trust and understanding between law enforcement and the people they served. One day, Erica had an idea. What if we bring the police and the community together to talk openly? She said during a meeting with local leaders, "We need to create a space where everyone can share their experiences and learn from each other." The idea turned into a program called Bridging the Gap. It was a series of workshops where police officers and residents could meet, share their stories, and discuss ways to improve their relationship. The first session was held in a local community center, and Erica was at the forefront, ready to guide the conversation. When the event began, the room was filled with tension. Residents sat on one side, police officers on the other. Some people crossed their arms, their expressions guarded. Erica could sense the discomfort, But she knew that real change often started with difficult conversations. "Thank you all for being here," Erica began. Her voice was calm but firm. "I know this isn't easy, but it's important. We're here to listen to each other, to understand each other, and to find solutions together." She asked everyone to share their experiences. At first, there was silence. Then, a young woman from the community spoke up. "I don't trust the police," she said. "I've seen too many of my friends treated unfairly. How can I believe they're here to protect me?" A police officer responded, his voice measured. "I understand why you feel that way," he said, "but not all of us are like that. Many of us joined this job to make a difference. I want to learn how to do better." The conversations grew deeper as the session continued. People shared their fears, frustrations, and hopes. Officers talked about the challenges of their jobs, while residents spoke about their experiences with bias and mistrust. Erica listened carefully, encouraging open dialogue and reminding everyone of the importance of respect. By the end of the session, the tension in the room had eased. People who had been strangers, or even adversaries, were now exchanging ideas and making plans to work together. Erica felt a sense of hope. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a step in the right direction. Over the next few months, Bridging the Gap became a regular event. Erica expanded the program to include schools, businesses, and other community groups. She also worked with law enforcement agencies to create new training programs focused on empathy, communication, and implicit bias. As the program grew, so did its impact. Residents began to see police officers as people, not just uniforms. Officers, in turn, gained a better understanding of the communities they served. Slowly but surely, trust started to rebuild. For Erica, this was the most meaningful part of her journey. She had taken a painful experience and turned it into an opportunity to bring people together. And in doing so, she showed that healing was possible, even in the face of deep division. Years had passed since the night Erica Johnson was unfairly arrested, and much had changed. The small incident that could have left her feeling angry and powerless instead became the starting point of something bigger. Erica had turned that moment into a movement, and its impact was felt across the country. Bridging the Gap, the program Erica created, had grown into a national initiative. Cities across the United States adopted her model of bringing communities and law enforcement together. Police departments used her training programs to teach officers about empathy, bias, and communication. Communities saw a reduction in tensions, with more people feeling safe and heard. Erica's story had become a symbol of resilience and determination. Schools invited her to speak to students, law enforcement conferences asked her to share her insights, and community leaders sought her advice. Despite her growing recognition, Erica remained humble, always reminding people that her work wasn't about fame. It was about making a difference. One day, she returned to the precinct where it all began. The department had undergone significant reforms, thanks in part to her efforts. Officer Cooper, the man who had arrested her, was no longer the same person. After undergoing extensive training and reflection, he had taken a different approach to his work. He had even become an advocate for reform within his department. When Erica and Cooper met again, it was during a public event celebrating the precinct's transformation. "Agent Johnson," Cooper said, his voice sincere, "I owe you an apology. What I did that night was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry. Your strength showed me how much I needed to change." Erica looked at him, her expression kind but firm. "Thank you," she said, "but this isn't about me. It's about creating a system that's fair for everyone. I'm glad to see you're part of the change." The event brought the community and the police together, a living example of what Erica had been working toward. Children played in the background while officers chatted with residents, not as authority figures, but as neighbors. It was a scene that might have been unthinkable years ago, but now it felt natural. As Erica walked away from the event, she reflected on her journey. What had started as a painful and unjust experience had turned into an opportunity to make a real difference. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when she felt tired and frustrated. but the progress she saw reminded her that every step was worth it. In the years that followed, Erica continued her work, mentoring young leaders and advising organizations on justice reform. Her name became synonymous with integrity, courage, and hope. But for Erica, the true legacy wasn't about her. It was about the lives that were changed, the trust that was rebuilt, and the belief that even the most broken systems could be healed. And so, Erica Johnson's story became a testament to the power of perseverance, proving that one person's determination could inspire a nation to do better.